my screen.
That's the trouble. Sorry.
On my left-hand side, all viewers, is the lady councillor.
I don't like the camera.
Right. Apologies for absence. I know of Kelly, I know of Joseph and Jackie. I'm not certain of Sarah or Julie Rodley, and I believe Rebecca is joining us later probably. So that's apologies for absence. Declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest? No. Any public participation? Don't think so. So let's move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any comments on those minutes? Or can we sign them and approve them? Should note that Councillor Crook was nominated and subsequently accepted the opportunity, the offer of being vice chair, which is great. We would, can we pick up tree strategy just quickly and just an update on that?
Yeah, we've got a draft report on the tree strategy here. And there's a few things that I'm not really entirely happy about. Specifically, it's been done for the council as a whole, and it would be good if we could actually identify the carbon sequestered and the rate of sequestration or loss for each site, because otherwise, how can we make decisions, or how can the town council make decisions about, you know, what to do in each area?
Yes, Sarah.
That's one aspect. The second aspect that I'm not entirely happy about is that they've made some replacement strategies with a very limited set of trees. And my concern is that this becomes a Bible, and that in future policy will be that we only plant those trees. And there are a number of trees there that I wouldn't plant particularly. And there are many trees that they haven't suggested, which I think would be beneficial, particularly for nature recovery as well as for carbon. So those are the two particular ones. The third one, and it comes out of this that I want to discuss with Danielle, who's the economics person, is they've identified a one-off planting, either of specimen trees or of sort of 5 foot or 6 foot trees, or of whips. And it's done with whips. Yes, they are small little diddy ones, about between 60 and 90 centimeters tall.
Okay.
Well, I don't think anyone in their right mind would invest all of their planting in one season. You would naturally do it over a period, and it's simply because of labour force, availability of land, developing, and also opportunity where trees are falling down. So what we're lacking is the ability to model those scenarios. So we're lacking the ability to model scenarios. So suppose we did half of the opportunistic planting now and did another half in 5 years' time, what would the impact be on the carbon captured, sequestered, the rate of sequestration over that period? And so we haven't got that flexibility. They're giving us a report, but as far as I'm aware, they're not giving us a model that we can then run to do our own what ifs, our own scenarios. So that gives me, of course, concern.
There's a couple of questions, Patrick.
Yeah.
This is a district council report, is it?
No, this is
Which report is this?
this is
Sorry,
so this report here was one that we, as the Climate Emergency Working Group, we ordered from a business called Economics.
Right.
We went to tender, and there were 2 that tendered, and it uses the data collected for the audit for all of the trees that now we've gone on to the new system. It's all electronic system. So we've used those data, we cleaned them up because it was appalling, the discrepancies. And I mean, the headline figures are that at the moment, we're sequestering about 60 tons of carbon per annum, is the estimate, with the trees we have. Just to warn, that is diminishing by up to 10 tons of carbon per annum if you take into account tree work. So just the number of trees that are being cut down and the loss of carbon as a result of that work. So in order to stand still, you've got to move forward. In other words, you've got to be planting continuously just to stand still.
Assuming the trees get bigger.
Yes, but interestingly, the sort of, I say, adolescence through to youthful middle age is the period when trees are at their best in the
Yeah.
sequestering. Once an oak tree,
grown ups.
say if we take a sort of birch tree, once it gets to about 60 years old, that's it. It reverts. So you've got it's what's called a sigmoid curve, an S curve, where they start slowly, they ramp up in their middle life, and then they taper off in their old age. And in their very old age, really, they're barely doing very much at all. They're in retirement.
So that should be part of our model then. It's, perhaps.
Yeah, I hope that it is.
The age profile.
The age profile,
the
yeah.
profile of the curve.
But I think, to be honest, it's the fact that we undertake tree work for safety means that a lot of the older ones actually are taken out. They're either cut down to a stump, a tall stump for a habitat, or they're just taken out altogether. So there are a few things that we want to try and press them to do. How much we'll get, I don't know, but that's where we are at the moment.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And that is, to what extent is Park Services involved in this?
At the moment, not very much at all.
Should they be? Because they are implementing.
Park Services will be coming,
Will be involved, yes.
and they were consulted
Yes, so
during
yes.
economics.
So
initial
they've been
investigation.
consulted all the way through.
Yeah.
When I did when Ken and I did our audit of Waterman Spinney, we've been around a number of sites and identified the miscalculation. There was an overcalculation in all of the results or all the data. That was run past Park Services at the time. And they will be, once we've had a chat with Danielle to find out what they're prepared to do for the money, we will then consult with Park Services. I think it's until we've got a firm idea.
Just seems to me that a lot of what you're talking about is like implementation. And I suspect the implementation has to be by Park Services, I'm assuming.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. Park Services have to have their hand on the tiller. They have to be the ones controlling it.
Yeah.
And do the work.
No, not necessarily.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, there are volunteer organisations that will do the work
Right.
with them or in for them.
Yeah, that has.
And but I think essentially they're the ones responsible for the ongoing maintenance of all the estate. So yes.
Can I ask another question? Patrick?
Yeah.
You implied, I mean, I think you said two things which at the early stage about the fact that it's a one-off rather than a long-term
That's
strategy.
what they've wanted.
And I completely agree. We want to have something that happens soon, but we also need a long-term strategy about tree planting, so we can continue to improve the our record of to help towards net zero. But you were suggesting, maybe I misunderstood, that instead of doing it all at once, we do sort of a part of it now and a part of it later. Yeah, I don't want to actually achieve less next year because I want to spread it out.
That's true. That's true. I mean, again, just for your information, even with the adventurous planting scheme, we still only break even with the rate of tree work in 2050.
Cool. Right.
So that means that
When you say we.
No, in terms
Some
of,
of us may be here then.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Still in
So
this
what I
room,
mean is
probably.
that, yeah.
Oh,
in terms of our strategy and in terms of the strategy of this committee, we can look to a reducing contribution from trees up to 2050, even if we go for the most adventurous planting schemes. So you're quite right. Rather than reducing, one should go for the adventurous one and then look at actually continuing that and building so that we're actually sequestering more carbon in 2050 than we are now.
Can you aim for about 2035?
Well, we can do that. Yeah, all right. So for Ken's,
I just
for Ken's
came to the
benefit,
chairman, that was all.
yeah, well, so
In one.
yeah, I think that I was very disappointed in that I would have thought they'd have flagged that to us. But it's definite.
It's a very depressing thought, actually. I mean, I haven't written, sorry. I jumped in.
Oh, no.
I jumped in being depressed. You go ahead and cheer us up.
Well, it is quite depressing. No, I was just going to say, I think this report is them gathering information, giving us the information we need about the sequestration and carbon storage, and giving us some scenarios. And we definitely need, we've got an appointment booked to get a bit more to try and clarify what the points that Patrick has raised. We've got a meeting with them next week about that. But then that will feed into a strategy, which
Yes.
is partly down to Patrick.
It is down to
look
me,
at, and,
but
and
it-
also parks
yeah.
have got their own like existing tree management policy or strategy, and we need to look
Yeah.
at how we bring it all together. So that's like the next stage, really. This is the sort of.
Yeah, I don't want to, I'm not rubbishing it. It's good data. We've got some information here, which is useful, and it just shows you what you've got to do just to stand still.
Well, that's the depressing thought,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I thought, with the fact that we were enlightened now about planting trees as being a good thing, means that we were on the upwards
up.
curve of.
But no,
improving our
far
carbon
from it. You know, we're talking about even planting 7,000 trees a year, we will only be back to where we were by 2050. So it will actually have dipped because there are very mature trees out there which have been blown down or been cut down, and they're not at the moment being replaced. So what's good? It's good that we've done this work because it's alerted us to that fact. It's good that we've got some data, and some information from it. So, but what is missing is a way of continuing and cranking the thing so that we then get an idea of just how much we have to do to keep up what we're doing and sort of do a bit more as well.
So we have to be more aggressive for
Yeah.
the immediate next year, but you also have to have a full plan going right up to
Going
2030,
forward, yeah.
2035
Yeah.
to increase that. So
Yeah.
so we have to improve our
Yeah.
sequestration rather
Yeah.
than see it reduced, which
Yeah.
I certainly haven't appreciated was
Okay.
at all in the picture.
So the
Which-
discussion we had in the last meeting, a few meetings ago, about whether we should include carbon sequestration in our carbon footprint for the town is probably totally irrelevant.
No, not really. No, we've got,
But
at
don't
the
want to.
moment, we've got, but it's tapering. I mean, that's the worrying thing,
Yeah.
that for now, we've got 50 tons per
Yeah.
annum, which is not to be sneezed at.
No, I understand that. I mean,
But the worrying thing is that by 2030, that may well have halved
Hmm.
if we carry on the way we are.
Okay, sorry.
So can I just say, it looks as if Tree Economics are going to be coming to present this report to whoever wants to be there, I think from the working group and to the parks team on the 6th of September. I haven't got a time yet, but Tuesday, the 6th of September. Sorry, I'm trying to negotiate between Patrick being away and Kyle's wife having a baby.
Monday would be good. Afternoon.
They can't do Mondays. And treat the dates that Tree Economics can do, and it's not there on Monday.
The Carl's wife delay things?
Kyle's wife,
What time of day would that be?
I don't know that.
Let's
Not
leave
too
it
late.
until
Okay.
Kath comes back, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone else has the same set of last minutes, but I've got mine down as 5 of 9. And then there's page 1 of 2. I don't think they have a second page for the
But
minutes.
this is the second page.
There is a- So it's my page of them. So then it's carbon footprint, building decarbonisation communications plan. Impact of events. And Great Big Green Week. Are there any other points on there we need to cover at this stage? Bear in mind, I suspect we'll come back to a lot of these mini-fish in the near future. You, Rebecca, are talking with Kath, I believe, about communication plan, is that correct? Or about to?
So I haven't used that, we haven't. No.
Okay. All right, so we move on from the minutes then. Yeah, and go to the terms of reference. This item arose because in our last formal meeting, we had one councillor present, which was Ian. And as a consequence, we were not quorumed. Nick and I sat down after that meeting and said, you know, we've had a discussion in informal meeting, as we are actually now. We have the same discussion subsequently. I know this, we're now quorum. Yeah, but that wasn't the case last time round.
Nor has it been very often.
No, has been very often. And we put a communication to Sheridan to say, look, should we actually change the method of operating? And the terms of reference that's been presented have been developed in conjunction with town clerk. And the particular aspect that's relevant is item 3, which says that the forum should be at least 2 members of the working group, which is not specifying that they have to be councillors. And the point in that respect is that we would report to the planning committee, but the recommendations would be presented to the planning committee for their consideration. And I think that's the significant thing. In other words, we are trying to make ourselves less time consumed and more focused and more effective in that respect. Are there any comments on the terms of reference? Donna?
That's fine, it's just because of the some of us work, it's like 3 o'clock's a good time for a lot of people. And
And on Monday, by the sound of it.
not on a Monday, no. I want it to be away, you know, this Thursday is good for me now because work and stuff. So it's going to take what's it, priority and stuff. So, but no, like, why is it not councillors and then is there something in the standing orders that makes it Cora having to have councillor?
Not for a working group.
Not for work, although that's fine then.
No,
Yeah.
and the group was already making recommendations to planning committee
Yeah.
for sign off. So it's not really any
In
different.
practice, it doesn't make any difference.
No, it doesn't make any
No,
difference.
because we don't have any powers or spend
No.
money,
Right.
other than recommendations. So it's just recommending, it's recognising reality.
Yeah.
I think that this majority of this group being non-councillors is a really good thing. Personally, I mean, it's nice to see some new faces around this table, for one thing, and new ideas, and that the community is engaged rather than it being a councillor talking shop. So I think it's I'm very happy with it.
Okay. May I ask, bear in mind what Donna's just said, may I ask each of you to perhaps communicate with Nick or with Kath and say when is the best time for you to attend? Because I'm concerned that we've got Joseph who doesn't come along that often. And Sarah, I know you're committed at work time as well. So perhaps if you could actually advise 2 officers when is best for you, even if it's just any time apart from when the pub's open. But seriously, I think it'd be helpful if we could actually aim to get greater presence. That's all right. So in that, sorry.
I have a concern that if we take the emphasis, take the pressure off the councillors, that we may get no council representation at all on the committee.
I wasn't arguing for that.
No,
That'd be a bad.
and so I think we should make every effort to encourage councillors to attend,
And that's why I think we should
yeah,
know when they're
um,
able to attend.
because I think it's important that we don't become detached
Yeah.
from the town council.
Yeah.
And sort of go off on our own thing, and lose that, how should I put it, the ability to persuade the planning, if nothing else, is really important.
Well, the council should be bearing in mind the purpose of this group, which is to, recognise and deal with, where as far as we can, mitigate the effects of the climate emergency.
Yeah.
And if we forget about this, we might.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, all I would say to this, because obviously you're going to report to the planning committee. The planning committee is going to report to the council. In theory, whatever your meeting, just say one of your meetings was 2 days after full council. You wanted to spend £25. You then have to wait 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think you should probably, unless Kath has got an idea how to get.
I think we can spend within our budget. We've got our budget,
Yeah.
and as long as we're within that.
The planning committee can.
no, we
Well,
don't.
I think the climate emergency working group.
I'm not convinced about that.
As I say,
Well, or planning,
It's contradicted officer.
yeah,
I mean, what you can do is it could go to town community or it could go to finance. If it was a small enough amount of money or to do it under its delegated powers. But just because it reports to plans doesn't mean an item can't appear on another committee
no.
fairly quickly. If that's what we want to do, but it might be worth checking with Sheridan.
Yeah,
Ken's right.
And planning actually meets more often than any
Yeah,
other.
it does.
Yeah,
Yes, but it doesn't mean that you can't have the circumstances that Ken
Yeah,
described.
no, true, yeah.
You
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure at least planning on its own can do it.
Planning,
as long as it
certainly
has-
expects to have.
as long as it has its budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't spend outside its budget.
No,
With regard to the terms of reference, are we happy to approve the changes as described? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But please, could all of you come back to Kath and or Nick, or both, with your best times available?
Would that include evenings?
Could we put it down as evenings as well? And see what comes out.
Well, I did mention the other day, I'll talk to Kath or somebody about a specific meeting where, because the standing committees, or two of the standing committees, don't seem to last more than about half an hour these days. I'm just wondering if you could slip any of these meetings in before their meetings, or even the first, or even the second planning committee meeting would be at 7:30.
Yeah.
You could meet at say 6:30. If it suits, that's if it suits everybody. If it doesn't, it's no good doing that. So quite easily slip a meeting in before a standing committee.
Yeah.
Rather than set one up in the afternoon.
Well,
Whichever.
That's worth considering.
just come back with your views about when you're available, and then we'll take you, make a decision on that. That's
Yeah.
right.
no, that'd be
Okay.
useful. Thank you.
Climate emergency working group budget, can we put that in the context of the Great Big Green Week as well?
Yeah.
Big-
Of course we will. I was going to argue, with you, don't I?
So this has come about as the council is hosting an event in partnership with Greener Henley, who are doing actually most of the legwork, all the legwork, for Great Big Green Week on the 24th of September. And Patrick can speak further about Greener Henley's need, but Patrick had come to me and I've discussed with Sheridan, and the officers are definitely in favour of making some more budget available to Greener Henley to be able to run this event. But because of the way the meetings are set up, we can't get it in front of a committee until too late, because we have an August recess. We can't get it in front of a committee until too late for Greener Henley to know whether they've got the financial support or not. So we were looking at the climate emergency budget, because we do have 16,700 allocated to climate emergency. And Patrick had previously mentioned that the land registry and mapping monies, so we'd put aside £1,200 for that. But we don't actually need that now because we can access the plans we need elsewhere. So the proposal from the officer side is to say that rather than earmarking £1,200 for land registry and mapping, we add it on to the public engagement funds. We've got £1,000 allocated for public engagement, which actually, having got quotes for panels for Great Big Green Week, it looks as if we may need quite a lot of that, actually, most of that for some design time and some panels. Still haven't finalised how many panels we want. But add it on to that with the proposal that we then could use up to £1,200 to help support Greener Henley with their work for Great Big Green Week. But it better if Patrick speaks on what actually Greener Henley would like to do with that money.
Right. So we started off by applying for about £2,400 from the central committee that runs Great Big Green Weeks. They organise it all. Some Climate Alliance or there's a group anyway. And they were so grossly oversubscribed that they said no. So it gave us a bit of a problem. We then came and talked to Kath and Jeremy and talked about what there might be available from the town council. But partly at Tony's suggestion, Tony suggested, why don't Greener Henley go out and appeal to the town, to businesses, to anyone we can, to get funding. And we've done that. And so far, I've got £950 in the account from the Thamesfield Youth Charity for the youth aspect of what we're doing, from Hobbs and from Mercer's. So we've also applied to another charitable foundation for just over £2,000, but that is uncertain, and we would like to have that £1,200 really almost as a buffer, that if we can't get money from elsewhere, and importantly, if we can't trim costs, because we've also been looking at that as well, then it would be, it gives us a certainty to be able to go ahead and run the event. In the event that we are able to source funds from elsewhere, and in the event that we do underspend on what we've got, then we wouldn't draw that money down. It's not a grant, it's just really having money available. I mean, I can find plenty of ways of spending that money on trees, but in the meantime, I think that this is a very valuable event to have this one-day market fair and have a good representation from the town council, particularly from this working group, to have it there. And so far, it's progressing really well. We've got about 25 stalls already subscribed. We're going to have the big marquee from the twinning marquee, the small marquee as well. Loads of gazebos, and I want to talk to you, Tony. I don't know if you still have that 4x4 gazebo.
Sure.
Looking very keen. That's one way we're trying to reduce our costs, is that Rupert House School have 4 gazebos, and I've got a gazebo, and the various other people, and so if we can go around and scrounge gazebos here in Henley, it's going to save roughly £100 a gazebo. So, that's a way of cutting costs down. We've also found a community equipment bank, the Tame Equipment Bank, which is partly funded by SODC, and that's stored at Chinner Rugby Club, and they have gazebos and marquees. So for the future, there's an opportunity there to get those, and they're roughly half the price of a commercial outfit. So what we're trying to do is both to get money from various sources, charities and from businesses, and also to cut our costs. But I can see that it could be £1,000 shortfall just over it. And just to say where that's going, about I'd say about £600 of that is going towards a mock-up sort of creation by Lynn Lambourne of the for the climate hub. Now, I don't know if you're aware, she won a prize at the Chelsea Flower Show for her creation. And it's all about recycling, it's about all sorts of things. And so she wants to make a big splash in the town on that. And I think that's great because Michelle Thomas, the mayor's aspiration is to promote that, promote the local climate and nature hub. And I think to have a good presence in the town square will be really important. So that's where just over half that money is going to. And there's another chunk of it is going towards a river cleanup, because Lynn Lambourne is also organising a river cleanup in the morning, and she wants to bring the rubbish up to show what it is that they're dragging out of the river. So that would be interesting as well, as long as she takes it away again. That's the most important thing.
Recycles it.
And recycles it, well, she probably will. It'll probably appear at the next Chelsea Flower Show.
That would definitely be upcycling.
Yes. So it's good stuff. And as I said, it's more like a bank account. We don't want a grant. We want to have the certainty of having the money there if we absolutely need it.
Any views on that?
Can I just add as well, even if we do end up giving that money to Greener Henley, then there is plenty of money or still at the town council. And if we've got a specific item that the climate emergency group wants to spend something, spend on, then we can take that back once we're running committee meetings again and bring that back to council.
How much does that amount to?
Well, if we spend 1,200, then we could just start. with
There's
1,200.
more money there. There's I got the impression there's lots of money. How much money?
There is quite, I don't know what the current balance is.
Right.
You might get the comms budget back as well.
Well, I think, we could definitely ask.
Okay, good. Any comments?
I told the show about this before the last finance meeting, because I knew that this it was drawn to my attention that Greener Henley may need some money for the week, the Green Week, and he says that if it's in the budget and as resolutions have already been made, he can authorise the payment up to a certain amount, which Tottenham is well below. And when I mentioned this to Tony, he was very keen that the money just didn't get lost from the budget. So as Kath says, a subsequent meeting of finance, an item can go to this or to planning. I'm not sure which, and to restore the money that's being spent unexpectedly on this, if needed. So there is that continuing option, and maybe you can slip in the comms budget as well if you're smart. Chairman might not spot it.
I just thought I would be a little bit careful with fundraising from businesses, given what's going on. So I would be in favour of using the council's money rather than putting too much pressure on. Not that you're putting pressure on businesses, but it feels a bit mean, I think.
Show money.
That's
Presumably if they sponsor it though, they get a bit of advertising out of it, don't they? So it's
No, I think that both Mercers and Tony, not Tony Hobbs, it's Johnny Hobbs, were happy to do it because we thought it was a good thing.
Right.
Thamesfield because of Diana's environmental competition. Well, it wasn't a competition, it was anyway. The things that she's been doing with schools, and also increasing youth engagement. So we've got that aspect as well.
So they'll get something out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
so.
In principle, I think it's a great idea. I'm just wondering, when you mentioned half of the money would be on bringing the rubbish up, could you just explain what that
So
means?
Yeah.
Like £600 spent on bringing rubbish.
no, less than much. It's about 400. But what it's doing, what she does is she organises a river cleanup, and she'll do this a few times a year. She did one at the regatta, and what they do is they get swimmers to take part, and if what she's wanting to do is to actually have a super cleanup and to get instructors there to instruct people on how to do it. And what they do is they on paddle boards mostly, but also diving equipment. They go down and they pull out all the shopping trolleys. And they pull out all the things that people have thrown into the river, and also littered the bank as well. So it's a thing that she does, as I said, a couple of times a year.
Whilst I agree with what you're making, Sarah, we should remember that it's not this committee's responsibility, this working group's responsibility for what they actually put into the Great Green Week. We're not putting
Sorry,
money.
but he's just said that half of the money was going to go to.
No, well, no, a lot less
A
than
lot
half.
less, so I'm just clarifying.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
is it? that
Yes,
is going
so
to
what's
be
it paying
spent
for?
Fair question.
And it's paying for,
by the river cleanups that happen naturally,
no, they don't happen naturally.
not
And
naturally, but she does. Lynn
She-
does
she-
these
yes,
all
she
the
does
time.
those,
Where
but
the funds come from.
we're what normally the funding would come there to get people to subscribe to it. So if you want to take part in it, you have to pay. But I think the idea is that this one would be a freebie, so that the people that are actually volunteering then don't have to subscribe to it, and that they will just take part, pull the stuff out, and then we get this display of all the stuff that's come out of the river.
I think Sarah's comment really is, why does it cost so much? First of all, and then is it a value?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I do see your point. You know, it's quite a lot of money, isn't it, £400? And it's worth it if the shock effect is such that people actually will change their habits, but you will never know that, will you, because you can't measure that.
It is between Great Green Week, of course, it's a fantastic thing to be doing. And I'm also just wondering how, because I know this is billed as CEWG with Greener Henley pushing this business fair, so where is some of, how are we
break down the cost.
dealing with some of that from the other, from the £1,200? What is it that we are doing for that? You know, so the Market Square is a joint
Yeah.
venture between
Yes.
us
and
and Green.
Henley, yeah.
So where are the costs of promotion, publicity?
Oh, right,
all of
okay.
that? Is that
Oh,
different,
yeah,
or is
no,
that-
okay, so I didn't make it
Like-
clear. The original budget that we put for about 2,700 that we put to the organisers, they had a pot of money from
Yeah.
government. And the original budget that we put had all of those things in it. It had things like marquee hire, publicity, posters, all of that was in that budget. So that is what we're trying, we've been out, that's why we've got the 950 quid so far. And we've got another 2,200 that we're hoping to get. And that will pay for all of that side of it. So what we've got is a residual amount that isn't covered. And that's what the 1,200 is
Yeah, and
for.
I suppose I'm arguing for some of that money that we are giving as CEWG to go towards our joint promotion publicity.
Well,
Why would we not want to be contributing towards that if
Yeah.
we are jointly organising it?
yeah, I mean,
So therefore it
effectively,
won't just be that drawdown if you need it. I think there's a case that we
we do it anyway,
set
just do it,
aside money,
yes,
but what we offer is within the parameters of
yeah.
what we agree is.
I mean,
what
it's-
joint adventure
Yeah, it's,
actually looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it
All right,
does.
just a bit.
Yeah, I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy to ring fence the money so that it goes on, but then it becomes a grant. And what I'm saying is that I'm not too concerned about having a grant. What I'd like is a facility, the option to spec, so that if we need it, we take it, but only if we need it, and I'm quite happy to account for it afterwards. You know, we will have a separate account for this, just for our other donors, so if they ask, they need to know where their money has gone.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but I don't see this as being a joint event between Climate Versus Working Group and Greener Henley. I think Greener Henley is leading.
Is it not a joint?
It is, no,
What's the
well, it's
working
actually being billed as, although no,
Yeah.
it's actually being billed as supported by, isn't it?
Town council.
group?
Yes, So it is being billed as supported by, yeah,
Well, we're manning the stalls, aren't we?
Yeah.
Reducing some of the material.
yeah, I mean, there will be a climate working group stall, and there will be is there gonna be a separate transport strategy group stall
We've
Or-
got a mixture of
and parks?
parks, and, yeah, estates, I suppose.
So in that respect, there's two 3x3 gazebos are town council. They're the two town council gazebos. And so in terms of the percentage of the display space, that probably works out at 5%. I mean, there's an awful lot else that's going on. But it's there. And I think for me, it's really important because I don't want it to be seen that this is a topic that's just delegated to Greener Henley to deal with. I think, and that's why actually what would be really good is to have some really big town council. We've got really big posters already for the for Greener Henley, and it'd be quite good to have a nice big PVC,
PVC free.
PVC free.
Paper, recycled paper.
Well, you'd have to do it on something that's, oh, they're talking about September, so it could be absolutely peeing with rain, so it's gonna have to be waterproof.
Plastic.
So I agree. I think those are the things I would be expecting or hoping that we would be wanting to put money towards.
Well,
in order to
Yeah,
promote.
that's what Kath was saying, is that there's £1,000 in the comms budget.
Just 1,200.
Plus the and so the £1,000 in the
Great.
comms budget is going to go exclusively towards presenting the town council. And
That's-
It seems to me that you're in complete agreement.
yes,
Yeah.
this is what someone described roughly as a raging agreement.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we want to support the event as a whole,
Yes.
and I've been more comfortable with
Yeah.
that than looking at specifics. how to
Specific
justify
items,
those.
yeah.
I think, and I'm happy that we describe as being supported by
Yeah.
the town council and climate emergency working group as jointly, but so I think we're happy. On Claudia's point from earlier, the idea of working with commercial organisations in the town and getting sponsorship from them is a good one, but there is a risk that they then seek to influence what we do for commercial reasons, and that's always something we have to be careful about becoming too dependent on any one organisation. So I think your point is right. It's important to work with these organisations, commercial organisations, and allow them to sponsor and have their name put to it. But we have to be careful that we're still in control of our own destiny.
I personally don't think that's going to be a huge issue, because we're talking about really quite small sums of money for a business, and mostly they see this as a good thing generally, and they want to have their name on it.
Yeah.
No, I think.
So we're all in agreement of putting £400 towards bringing up a load of rubbish from the.
Yeah, this is-
Well, I think
I think
it may end up helping that, but that isn't the purpose of the funding. The funding is to make.
Funding is to support Green Henley.
But we're supporting the Great Big Greenway, and Green Henley's rail. I think that's an important distinction.
Everyone happy with
I think
that?
everyone's.
Okay, let's move on then. We've got the Great Big Green Week in there, it's a separate item. Would you like to start talking to that? And then I also produced a press release, and I'll talk about that afterwards in the next.
That's number 8.
Okay.
Right, so I've gone through, I can't remember who it was who pulled together a whole list of items and achievements that we've done.
We
Right,
Well,
Rebecca, Claudia, I can't remember who, anyway. So I've pulled together items, and this has got fun emergency ones, sort of Henley Town Council ones, so I've put the building decarbonisation in that, and also some points from the neighbourhood plan. So it's not necessary to go through now. But
there's a.
Except paper, maybe it's soft.
I've heard you say that for ages. I've heard it for 25 years now, but I've got you retired up those.
There we go.
I think it says pound notes, but not necessarily.
So really, it was for people to just have a look and see whether they disagreed with anything or they could think of anything else. Because I'd really like to get stuff to the designer by the end of next week.
So what is your deadline? Monday?
Wednesday. Or I can say Monday if that's better.
That's
When
very
you
good.
say to the designer, do you mean the Great Victoria next door?
Yes.
Right.
So with the idea that we get some, as a background, some panels
Okay,
done.
great. Okay.
Probably
Yeah.
AO size, I was
Mhm.
thinking, so pretty big. Well,
A1,
well, maybe A1, I need to sort of
work it out.
like measure it out. and think. But these were the things that stood out to me with some fairly, and these were the sort of bullet points, whether we can get all of that on, whether it's too much. And if you've got corrections, say particularly Rebecca, you might have corrections on the solar streets, I feel. Any comments would be great for the research.
Can I request particular councillors to consider what the council has done? Whether it be within the council or within SODC or even OCC. Because I think the comment I'd make about the council is it is not very good at praising itself.
No.
Fair enough, I'm not, you write that down. What I'm saying is that I think the council is not, it's bloody useless, it's actually talking itself up.
We have
Thank
a
you.
conservation warden
And
as well.
And I'm not arguing, I'm just saying, could you guys think about it? For example, I don't know whether you got in here, but the peat-free compost, which I go on about regularly. And yet, you know, the council does make a message about it.
And you're right, sir, yeah, that's the point.
And it's not just the council and the councillors and the officers, but it's also what influence might we have had in SODC and as a result, OCC. So, you know, I don't know whether the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit's in there. But that is actually something which is going to reduce pollution and increase safety and reduce emissions.
So I haven't got parks input to this. So parks will be separate, so I just thought things like.
Well, I'm
MMA
really
would
talking
be
about
probably going.
specifically the councils, because I think they've got a wealth of knowledge, and it might go back some years.
Well, the solar
Looking at some of
panels on our building, for example.
Yeah, yes.
Can I
Very
make an
good point.
observation?
Yeah.
Can I make an observation? There's probably already enough writing on these 3 sheets. What we need is the pictures.
I know, that was
Yeah.
the other thing I was going to do.
Yeah,
We'll
the-
find pictures
Yeah.
to back
Yeah,
them up.
that actually, that's fantastic. There's so much stuff there that, you know, if you put any more text to it,
I'm not saying more text. I think frankly, what Rebecca's trying to do is talk more clearly to the residents about
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
council has been doing.
Yeah,
So the more information she's got, the better to be able to communicate. It may not be all at one time.
it's what, I mean, what you need is, it's big, simple messages, and then you can have a backup if people are interested, but this amount of text is more than most people can take on.
Yeah.
So it's big messages.
It's nice to see.
So,
it's great.
I think it's
Yeah.
really great, because it reminds me of what we have actually.
Yeah, no, you're right.
so
This is a brilliant document to draw upon, and I just wanted to share briefly my most recent example of having to design a Lambeth Palace for thousands of bishops that attended a garden party with the charity that I work for. And we started off with case studies, very detailed, and in the end, we came up with these very broad but very positive messages that could be used going forward. So it wasn't just a one-time use, and I think that is one of my points is, how can these panels be sustainable?
Yeah,
They're not just used for one thing, but they can be used, they can put in, imagine having a public event in the town hall, and you're like, oh, we could put some messaging here, you know, we can put a board here, put a board there. So this is really, really great. but I would encourage you to review what phrases stick out that will still be valid in a year's time.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very happy to share the process that I went through, it was a very long and painful process. But what we got was an amazing banner that we can now use in multiple settings, in multiple events, because it draws out 20 mph speed limit or car cups.
Mm.
You know, it's these headlines that really hit people, because I'm afraid that Joe Public is not probably going to spend at least
No.
half an hour to be able to.
Yeah.
But this is definitely the things that we need to give to the councillors. They hear, read this crib sheet before you go stand on the stand, that you know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
So I will just offer that from a recent example of running.
Yeah.
So that
So,
makes more,
something really useful, that would be a very good
Yeah,
idea.
and I will also send you the details of a very environmentally friendly PVC-free company based in Oxford that did this at a very reasonable cost for us.
That'd be
They
great.
did a 1.5 metre by 1.5 metre banner. Right.
Could you copy that?
I will, I put a note down to do that.
so can I just come back to, if you can come back with any comments on this document to Kath by Joe's Monday. And then that will give you time, Sarah, to work with Kath if it's appropriate to actually help her get it all done by the end of the week.
I'll probably defer to.
What's the name? Schindler Road? Sorry, beg your pardon.
Go on, complicated. So.
So,
Okay,
yeah, that would be my general thing.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if part of the guidelines is that if you draw out the headlines that speak to you, that could be.
Yeah.
As well as the detail.
anything else on the grid? Terrific Green Week.
How are we advertising it? What's our promotional strategy?
Our comms manager is working on a promotional scheme for it,
Do you know-
well, for the event.
Any details?
I don't know any details at this time, but she said yesterday that she was starting to put it together. I can ask her what she's got.
And could you actually then circulate it to everyone? So they may have come to us, right?
I hope that Julia and Lucy will be working on it between the end, so that will be,
It'll be combined.
I hope so. Yes,
Well, that's a good question.
I also came. Thanks.
It's a relevant question then, forget about them. One thing you need to think about is who's going to be present on stand.
yeah.
Who's going to be
Who's
present on
present on
stand?
the stand? Because unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give out that because I'm really busy.
You're not at the event at all?
Yeah, no, I'm at the
Oh,
event.
right.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna be racing
You're
around
doing
like
everything
a,
else, right.
yeah,
Oh,
racing around like a terrier.
And I'm in France.
oh,
I'm always up for being on the stand.
Brilliant.
well, councillors as well, I think.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, ideally,
It'd be nice to buddy up.
yeah,
With councillor with a non-councillor.
yeah.
What time is it from?
It's from 10 o'clock in the morning
Mm.
until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But in shifts, so you don't do it the whole time.
On a Saturday.
I-
on
Oh,
Saturday.
Saturday, that's good. Oh, that's fine. It's not a weekday.
Could you make Donna said yes?
Don't know.
So Donna said yes.
And
No, well,
also,
maybe.
and also there's no
No.
hours, okay?
No, Al, good. I'll bring Binky.
It's Saturday 24th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have got a holiday about that. I may or may not be available. If I'm in Henley, I'll.
It's brilliant.
So I might have to drop my daughter in Bath on that day. But it's either the 23rd, 24th or 25th, so I mean, it's obviously in my diary, but
See how it
she
goes.
has to be dropped
Yeah.
off, and she has to be
Yeah.
dropped off.
Anything else you want to cover on Terrific Green Week? And timeframes?
No, Nick will be around from our side.
So where are you?
I may be in France. It's my husband's
Not-
60th birthday.
Is it?
Oh.
Oh, you seem like young of you.
Oh. So anyway, but we can send something out to try and sort of pin down who can cover what time.
Yeah.
I think that'd be.
So how often are the stints? Is it an hour, 2 hours?
I think maximum 2 hours.
It sounds like we might be quite thin on the ground, which is worrying, isn't it?
So it's 3 2-hour stints. Or you can split it down. I mean, the other thing to do is just do an hour and then come back, you know, so to hand it.
Yeah, that's fine.
And is it what's that? Is it the 24th of September?
24th of September.
I could do a stint, that's not.
Yeah.
Could you potentially do more than one stint?
I could potentially do more than once. I prefer not to do 4 hours this time because it's
That's
a
asking
bit
a lot.
exhausting, but
I'll try asking the councillor group if anyone's interested. Should be any council will be welcome.
Yeah.
Could you also email a general
As
request,
long
but
as-
specifically include
As long as
Joseph
David
and
doesn't come in fancy
Jackie
dress.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah,
Kelly?
Yeah.
So,
Just one other thing, so I'm mindful that Great Big Green Week is in Home Week, and this is one day. Do you know of any other plans that the council is planning to do internally? Like to promote Great Big Green Week, because that's kind of what we try to encourage other organisations. It's like, how are you?
Yeah.
What changes are you going to make, or what things are you going to do internally as a council office? So it's more internal facing rather than. Does that make sense?
yeah, I don't know. that
Great
we've
question.
discussed.
it's all on the second page.
Oh,
Yeah, well, we have got points on there. I think Parks have been quite interested in, or possibly Lex running a conservation event. But I don't know whether that's come to anything. I need to catch up with the Parks manager.
Because we've got RNA, when is that next week? Is it next week, RNA?
No, it's
We've
not.
got Tuesday, 30th.
So, and just to be aware that this room will be used on Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday, it's going to be used for an event relating to the hub, the climate hub. And so the council may want to have representation, just or encourage people to come along to listen, to take part. It's very much a consultative. We're trying to find out from the people of Henley what they want. And then on Thursday, it's business group. And the business group is trying to encourage local businesses to take part, find out what they can do. And the idea is for people to relate what they've done, local businesses to relate what they've done, and to encourage others to do things themselves. So those are 2 events that the council might like to, you know, have an internal memorandum to encourage people to join in.
There's also point 1, 2, 3, 4 on the list of ongoing measures, which is relating to Ken Arlett's comment about paper usage, reducing paper usage.
We have reduced it a lot.
Well, in that case, talk about it and actually say how much it is. Because seriously, people actually relate to numbers.
Yeah.
is it recycled paper that we have?
Do
What?
they?
I always recycle my agenda at home.
No, I mean, it's
Like,
printed on.
Used to
recycled
be.
paper.
I don't know whether it is or whether
No,
it's
it's
just
not.
FSC certified.
Yeah.
It's quite minor.
Yeah.
Okay, any other points on the creative agreement?
Yes, it would be quite good to have an idea of any other days that we might be required and times. You mentioned those workshops. Just so that we can sort of start,
If there's a
Yeah.
timetable, yes.
yeah.
Calendar,
Yes, we
Yeah.
do that every week, yeah. I don't think I've seen one.
not yet.
Okay, can we then go on to the press release, which I wrote? Let me explain why I wrote it. First of all, Rebecca and I and some others who are in the group were talking about the way in which we need to communicate what we've done. And that relates to this list that's that Kath has produced. And I felt that we need to be more proactive, to be honest. And then when it appeared that we might lose our money for grants and audits, I was a bit stroppy about it and said we've really got to be more proactive in terms of communicating the opportunity of grants and the opportunity of audits. And
Why would we lose that?
pardon?
Remind us why would we lose it?
The initial discussion when we were going to provide funds to Great Big Green Week was that it would come out of our budget. I might be mistaken. Let's assume that's the case. But that's not the case now. But nevertheless, I do think we've got to be more proactive and actually publicize what we do. And this isn't just because we've got to get organizations thinking about it. We've got to start recognizing that not only emissions matter, but also the cost of energy matters. And the yellow bit at the bottom came when I heard an article in the on the radio, and it was a charity worker talking about their cost increases. And one of the things I'd not appreciated was when we talk about the energy cap, that only relates to residential properties. It doesn't relate to businesses of any size. It doesn't relate to charities. It doesn't relate to community bodies like surgeries. And I just think we've got to get people thinking about it. And I think we've got to use this fund we've got to help people start reducing their emissions or improving their energy efficiency, let's put it that way. And if there is more money to go for from the council, then we should be using it in that manner at this time. Because I think it's going to affect organisations in Henley dramatically in the next 12 months. And I think we've got to put some criteria about how we allocate money. I think we've got to have an application process. But this is a means of that. This is a way of talking about it and saying, are you in favour of it? Taking this approach, and should we be more proactive and actually be more publicly minded? And that actually means probably telling the council what we want to do rather than getting their approval to do it. So, any comments?
Well, you see that the Basque of Alarms has gone bust.
The what?
Basque of Alarms in Chipday has gone
Yeah.
bust. One of the reasons is energy costs.
Yeah.
He said you just can't make it go anymore, which is a great shame. I was just, in terms of the press release, I think the messages are right, but I would suggest that you change the order a little bit, because the audience here is local organisations. You want to catch their eye, and what you're offering, I would have the preamble here. I would put that a bit further down. Because what you're saying is, come to us, we can do an energy audit for you and also help you to reduce your energy costs. So I'll put that right at the top, because an awful lot of people just don't.
Would you like to amend it there?
I'm quite happy to amend it, that would be completely fine. And also, in terms of the title, I would suggest that we emphasise the cost, reducing the cost.
Please.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, happy to do that.
Any other thoughts? Sarah?
So bearing in mind the conversation we just had about Great Big Green Week, not sure when this is pitched to go out.
Well, if you look at it, we've got the very end talks about the application dates. And I think we've got to get the application dates in for energy audits soon, because it might actually relate to energy efficiency improvements. And then later on, have a date for energy grants, energy efficiency grants.
So I'm just thinking that, given that we're trying to promote Great Big Green Week, we've got a store on the 24th, that we've got a business meeting happening here. There are good opportunities where we can speak to the businesses, hopefully, that attend some of these meetings. So I'm wondering about it's when.
in this
you know,
connection.
You make a connection, but you frame it within Great Big Green. But I wonder if that's,
I don't think Great Green Week is, my own view is that it's not that relevant. This should be an ongoing activity, and I think it should be something we have next year and the year after.
Given the timing of Great Big Blue, and I agree with you, Sarah, that I think that it would be a good idea to have this also out. And if you're talking to organisations, we've got a stall, and this is a good place to have it, isn't it? But given that Great Big Green Week is only like a few days
Yeah.
before, could we be a little bit flexible here with the application?
Whatever you want to, that's, it's
Okay,
put for discussion.
because otherwise people say, oh, I've got to have it in 4
Yeah,
days'
no,
time.
no,
Whereas, but actually having a little bit of pressure on time is quite a good thing, because you can say, look, we've got the money, but it's limited. You're going to have your application
First
in
come,
2
first
weeks'
served,
time. Yeah, exactly. It'll get them in.
I mean, what
Yeah.
Rebecca and I have to do is actually find out how much the cost of audits are, which is why I think we probably need more money from the council for that purpose.
Yeah.
But equally, I think we've got to make certain that the people who have the audits, that our experience to date has been, we've done the audits on schools. D2 is probably the best one we've done.
Yeah, and even that's only, they haven't come back for their second lot.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, we've got to make certain that people are serious about it, which is why we need to include businesses in there as well.
Yes.
But they need to be, I mean, Rebecca and I went to see Fremont watches yesterday. In the context of, that's not repeatable, okay. In the context of Chorlton Hills.
how,
Is it? We went to see a company in Henley yesterday. Which is on a 10-year leasehold. Now, you need to make certain that the organisations you're talking with have got the ability to, and got the ability and the funds to implement some energy efficiency improvements, rather than just giving it to schools who say that's nice, but
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
On staff, that's.
Yeah.
Have you decided what company should be doing the audit, given some discussions we've had in the past?
well, I think we should go back to them and ask if you have any others as suggestions as alternatives. That'd be great.
Who should we ask?
That's EIE. Opposite books.
Right,
Yeah.
And
but
I-
given that they work with one company, they're not probably going to give any alternatives, would they?
In that case, I'll ask,
We're going to have a insulation survey done here, aren't we? By someone. That might be a suitable party. No? Okay.
I think it's a problem to get people who actually know what they're talking
Yeah.
about
This is,
doing
what-
these surveys. It's a big problem.
yeah,
So a lot of it is guesswork.
because it's
you
generous to
know
all.
Tony Cowley.
Yes,
I'm happy to ask him if you
I
know.
would ask
It's
you,
very good.
yes, he doesn't bullshit.
He does talk a lot at times.
He does
He does
talk a
talk
lot, but he
a lot,
doesn't
but he is-
bullshit. Yeah,
so one other opportunity is, I don't know what your thoughts are on the business partnership.
Any business partnership.
An opportunity to speak to them about this.
Yes,
Yeah.
for valid point.
I'd say on the whole, they're tenants rather than property owners or leaseholders.
Mm.
They are, so they tend to be small one-man businesses, and so they're probably not in a position. I think ideally, we're looking at businesses that are established in Newtown and have maybe got 20-year lease or 25-year lease. Because the problem is, you can only justify the expenditure over the period of your lease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to make the saving in whatever you've got left on your lease, then it's not worth doing. Because you can't guarantee that you will have that building after the end of your lease.
What I think we
So
should
I
do
was
is,
just thinking, wonder, so short-term lease people are still going to suffer as a result of price hikes. So is there anything that we can encourage them with from this?
No, Yeah, it's really hard because really, we're in a peculiar situation in that one of the significant property owners in this is the Henley Educational Charity. And they can let any building they've got out without doing anything. And so there's no incentive for them to improve the energy efficiency on the buildings that they've got. In fact, they would argue that it's against their charitable purpose because they're diverting funds away from their charitable purpose in order to do the improvements. The people that they're lessees, is it? The people that lease anyway, them one. They can't do anything because they don't own the fabric and they haven't got a security over in the longer term to make sure to ensure that they get the benefit from it. So we're kind of in a cleft stick there. And I don't know quite how you break that one, how you actually get it so that it's beneficial for both parties. Because you know it's beneficial for the leaseholder because the leaseholder, the lessee anyway, it's beneficial for them because they get their reduced bills. But trying to persuade the landlord is a challenge.
There will be no doubt requirements, minimum requirements on the landlord, just like there is for domestic rented properties.
I don't think there are. A Part L doesn't apply to, I don't think, we need to look at it.
There
Something
will
we
be-
need to
There
research.
will be in the future.
Because that was just astonishing if that's truly the case, but even if the minimum was say D, then the likelihood is that they go up to the D and don't bother with anything else.
Yeah.
So it's really tricky
Yes.
to tackle.
Yeah. But I think that's something that would need a lot more homework to find out just what what persuasive points are.
Yeah.
What are the key points that we can actually use to persuade landlords? Because essentially it's the landlords who need to persuade to improve their premises.
Is there a difference between residential, because if you have a privately rented property, the landlords now, when they let it, have to bring it up to,
Yes.
I can't remember what it is, but
B,
the
R or C, I
whatever.
think.
But is it a different rule if it's a commercial letting?
Yes.
Right, okay.
But surely it will follow the
Well,
same route.
we
at
need
some
to look
point.
at, we
yeah.
need to look
It's
at
also,
Yes,
Part L. Building regs.
Can I just ask Kath, does the council have a list of businesses that are paying business rates? Or is that SODC?
That would be SOGC.
Because I think what we ought to think about is almost not just doing this article, but perhaps doing print off it and emailing it or addressing it, taking it around Newtown trading estate and putting it through the doors.
and I think we need to work on, I think we also should at some point contact those if indeed it is one or two big ones, we should approach them as well, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Because why shouldn't they be given the grants?
Well, they're the obvious ones to be given the grants
Yes.
because they were the ones that have the, they've got,
Yeah.
they've got a long-term interest.
So out of this, Rebecca is going to revise it.
Yes, yeah. that's-
Sarah's going to think about how it can be communicated in the meetings of Greater Green Week, yeah. And then we need to get into the
Yeah,
press.
we'll work on that one because you may be presenting.
Me?
Yes,
This?
yes.
I know nothing about this.
No, I vote for that as well.
Yeah.
Excellent idea.
Gloria.
Bring the
Yeah.
meeting to a close, I think probably does.
Can I just, I just wanted to, this is only for information, just as some general information. Last week, Rishi came to the town hall. And Liz went to a very hot pub garden in Stedford.
Yeah.
So I went to listen to them about to I have to say. I managed to ask Liz a question. I didn't, but somebody else asked the question to Rishi, which was about net zero and insulation and stuff. This trust rather worryingly said, insulation, that's an idea. I hadn't really thought through that one.
just under
Slightly
that.
worrying. Rishi said that there was already in the treasury some big package to encourage households to get insulated. But it was all bogged down in red tape.
But the government document that was released either early this year or late last year
Yeah.
had nothing to say about insulation of homes.
Mm.
It's one of the
Pretty
big gaps. They
Yeah.
received massive criticism. for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a huge, well, I'll be kind and say oversight.
It's so, it's simple, straightforward.
It's one of the-
Available now, not too expensive, and it makes a big difference.
And it fits in with the
Yeah.
current, crisis in energy prices. It was a very foolish.
That's not-
Yeah, so-
They're not even gonna afford the energy price hike. They're not even gonna affect them remotely.
No.
No, that's what's really sad.
I also think it's just not sexy enough to talk about.
It isn't, that's the thing, it's just not sexy. It's not at all sexy,
Oh,
it's boring, you know, very boring stuff, it's been around for years, but actually it works and it's here. now.
And I think they probably presume that people have by now insulated their fancy
Yeah.
walls and so on, but
Yeah.
I reckon a lot of people actually haven't done that yet.
Problem is that climate change is not sexy either.
No, it isn't. No one wants to talk about it.
Right, on that point, let's call the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.